And good evening, everybody. Welcome to McDuff Lives, and welcome to a Wednesday night trio. This one featuring Mark Kulacz of Who's the Tonic Live and Nick from Twitter, also known as Pizza Pickles Burr. Hi, Nick.
Good evening.
And hi, Mark.
Good evening, John. Good evening, audience. And hello, Nick.
Well, guys, so much is happening right now along the research lines that you guys have been following. And of course, I've been doing my own. I'm deep into the early virus Hep B research and yellow fever and malaria before that. And I'm going to do a show on that tomorrow morning, by the way, when I do my minefields, because I really think it's starting to make sense to me. But that's ancient history compared to what we're facing now. And just to let it get started, I'm going to ask Nick to bring us up to date as to what do you think, Nick, is the most important topic we can toss around with Mark Kulacz tonight and myself?
Well, I think that the history is just fine. I think everybody is okay to do a little bit of time traveling, and even if in their mind's eye they can tune everything to black and white, if that helps. If that's what you think was happening in 1937 or 1945, then do it. But I think that we have always some good stuff from the past that is important to understand in so much that it's foundational to things that appear to have continued and relate to what's occurring today.
Well, before Mark jumps in, I guess I forgot that I had this. It came in the mail today, and I just got it. I want to show it to you because this is the Medical Department, United States Army, Preventative Medicine in World War II, Volume 3, Personal Health Measures and Immunization, published by the Office of the Surgeon General in 1955. And in here, it tells in detail all of the vaccinations that the soldiers were given during the World War II period. And mentioning the history, I say, well, gosh, I got that book on. I sent away for it. I saw it was on Amazon, and so this is so important to me because I really want to see, who was running these programs, and of course, this is just the Army. My dad was Navy, but what amazing things are in here. Like, for instance, I just happened to open up to the encephalitis vaccine. Did you know that they were given encephalitis vaccines in World War II?
I did not know that. Did you know that, Nick?
I didn't. I've never had access to an artifact like that, and I think that's a great find. And tell us more. What else jumped off the page at you?
Well, it does say right in here in the book that after they gave the yellow fever vaccination, they realized that it was making the troops sick, and they were getting jaundice, and they stopped using it at a certain point. But there's a vaccination for influenza in 1945. I mean,
there's a lot written about that that I just recently discovered. There were many. It's described as innovations. I don't know if that's the word I would use, but there were many changes made to the influenza vaccine, the way it was developed, administered. Maybe not administered so much, but during World War II, some people are very proud of that. I think it's great that you got the book and you've had the appreciation for the yellow fever vaccine concern in World War II, John. Of course, World War II is where they, are people who are 1,000 times braver than I ever am. Storming the beach, as Hollywood has shown us, because we'll never be there. And, bullets flying right through them, but the military made sure everyone was vaccinated.
Well, listen to this. This is page 3. This asked what jumped out at me. Page 327. Okay. I just opened the book to it, right? Japanese bee encephalitis vaccination. Development and adoption, large-scale vaccination of human beings against Japanese bee encephalitis was first practiced by the Russians, but vaccines prepared in the United States, according to their procedures, were found to possess little or no immunogenic potency. In early 1943, however, a mouse brain vaccine with immunogenic potency measurable in animals and in human volunteers was developed in this country. Action was initiated in September 1944 to obtain a stock of this vaccine and to sponsor and encourage efforts toward the improvement of this agent. Because of the unique nature of the vaccine and the difficulties inherent in its preparation, only limited supplies, blah, blah, blah. The immunizing agent, the vaccine adopted consisted of a 10% saline suspension of virus-infected mouse brain, the virus having been inactivated by formaldehyde. The Nakayama strain of Japanese B. encephalitis was used. This material was procured from commercial biologic manufacturers and was prepared and tested for use in the armed forces in accordance with the National Institute of Health minimum requirements for this agent. Mouse brains in our soldiers to protect them from encephalitis.
Does it mention where that vaccine was researched and possibly even manufactured?
I don't know. I mean, it's not in that one paragraph. There may be a footnote, but again, I just got this book today, and it opens up to vaccination against yellow fever. There it is, right there. This is so the interesting thing to me is, the whole idea of vaccination and the whole idea of virus are so tied together. And in my hepatitis B research, it looks as though, I'm not a doctor, guys, this is just my opinion, but it looks as though they have crafted a vaccine from the antigen. In other words, they're saying that if you vaccine, usually you want a vaccine from the virus, right? And the antigen.
Or yeah, a subunit, a particle.
Okay, but anyway, I'm starting to wonder if this whole idea is kind of a phantom in that, yes, there's a disease. Yes, if we do this research, we may be able to cure the disease. Yes, if we say there's a virus, then that doesn't hurt anything because we can visualize it and attack it as if it, but doggone it, I think that the thing that's making us sick is the serum and the stuff that's come along with it over the centuries now. It's just that's what it's looking like to me, and that's just my opinion. I'm not a doctor, and I hope I'm wrong.
Well, you don't have to be a doctor to look back on some of this history. And in those 1930s, 1940s, obviously beforehand, the viruses were unseeable. They filtered out the product as best as they knew how at the time. And what they thought would be something which would inoculate and provide some protection for an animal or a human against something, many times still caused sickness, sometimes different sickness. Wow, so you can make something sick or incapacitate something with a solution where you can't see any bacteria under a microscope. That sounds like a bioweapons dream to me. And then the money just started to pour in. Well, if you can't see it, people were even more fascinated with it, as if they immediately saw the military application of such a technology. And they said, well, it must be a super, super tiny bacteria that we just can't see. that was virology. Well, these flasks, bottles identified as West Nile virus vaccine. Who knows what it was? I mean, it was definitely something, and it definitely caused effects, without a doubt. But what was it really? And it is just because it was described as some virus that possibly came from a mosquito. Did it really? There were so many products, so many different animals and animal parts and human serum used. Who knows what it really was? By the time it was done manufacturing. But the hepatitis, you've shared the story of your father before, and the yellow fever vaccine disaster, it was the manufacturing in early 1941. It halted January or so, early 1942 for the U.S. military because soldiers were getting jaundice and some were dying. Long term, they have observed higher cancer rates, although there are, of course, documents which question that. And when they question the higher cancer rate, what that means is that they weren't able to totally disprove it. It means there's data to suggest it's possible, but it's not conclusive. So that's, of course, it's all a little linguistic wrestling at that point. But the cancer that it was causing was liver cancer. And the yellow fever vaccines were being associated with hepatitis B. And I just wonder if perhaps this feeds into what you were saying, John, is that, well, now they discovered something that can cause hepatitis B. Well, maybe a hepatitis B vaccine can be developed someday, which can cause other cancers. It would be interesting because we know that the development and research of the yellow fever vaccine did happen at the Rockefeller University in New York City, the United States of America, directly across the street from a research facility called Memorial Hospital, which was rebranded Memorial Sloan Kettering Hospital 24 hours after the bombing of Hiroshima by the industrialists Sloan and Kettering, who provided an enormous sum of money to take it from a simple research and cancer hospital to the world's first cancer research hospital, which was also going to use industrialized methods of research and development, which were inspired by and assisted with the technologies and the business acumen of the military industrial complex in World War II. And this leads to, this is potentially, not sure, but it sure is a very intriguing lead-in to several years later, polio research and an outbreak, if Nick may want to review with the audience, of a new cancer-causing virus, first found in the 1970s, and then with an outbreak in the 1980s.
And we're talking about the early operation from the Wistar Institute out of Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm.
And this was after the Cutter incident in the mid 1950s, where a current polio manufacturer, a vaccine manufacturer that is in the CDC schedule at the time, manufactured a batch out of Berkeley. And there were a number of immediate paralysis injuries and a few deaths. And everybody said, whoa, Nelly. And it started two different scientific camps, two different chariots on a race to get to the product patent, to become, the preferred product, to replace the current formulation. That was a big piece of what, swelled up behind this. And one was Sabin and one was Kaprowski. So in Sabin's work, he went to, I believe, Czechoslovakia, and did tests in certain cohorts with his formulation, which was I believe, a live attenuated. And Kaprowski went to Africa, where there was no regulatory oversight of his cohorts at all. There were no public health offices or authorities. I mean, there was the Belgian Health Authority. It was a provincial entity. But anyway, to set the stage of sort of what was happening, what was going on with public health, and why were people doing vaccines in Africa, that's where Kaprowski took his experiment. And included in that work was one Dr. Stanley Plotkin. And for those of you that are looking at the current vaccine schedule and digging into the scientific merits and data behind the products that we are now essentially compelled to get at all sorts of ages, including shots at birth, Mr. Stanley Plotkin is someone that you should take a close look at. There's a great deposition out about Stanley. It's 3 hours long. It does have a good time index on it down below in the notes. If you find that version on YouTube, just go look for Plotkin deposition, and he will discuss in this court deposition in 2018 how a great number of the products that he holds a patent for and makes millions of dollars a year for since the 60s and 70s have very little or very questionable standards in the safety and efficacy testing, particularly related to long-term follow-up. So though, if anybody is in the fight and, you're really looking for important data, that's a legal deposition. That's part of public record because it's in the state of Michigan's, I can't tell you exactly where it sits in public data, but it is accessible and it's in the public domain. I got a copy of the PDF, but that's a very important piece about one of the key scientists who was involved in this work. It all came down to, what did they make the local oral polio vaccine out of? And there was a big kerfuffle that spilled out into the public space in the mid to late 90s, when an investigative author, Ed Hooper, wrote a huge book, over 1,000 pages, called The River. And he had lived in Africa. He had watched AIDS, catch fire there and destroy communities and just change the landscape. And he was back in the UK, and he found his cadre of scientists and critics and allies, and went after the story. Now, he thought that this particular period of time, that work was the source of HIV. What he doesn't seem to really account for in any extensive way is the U.S. Action in biodefense that was flaring up at the time because of the Cold War. It was flaring up all over the world. It never really went away after the war. But that's sort of the stage of, what Mark was talking about here is we were looking for a new polio vaccine. We went to Africa. We used I say we, meaning mankind, but the Kaprowski team used local chimpanzees to produce their product. And for those of you that don't know, the chimpanzee pan-troglodyte is the natural hearth for SIV CPZ. That is the genetic parent of HIV type 1.
SIV is?
Simian immunodeficiency virus.
So it's the primate version, if I may. Maybe that's too imprecise, but it's a primate version of HIV.
It is. And yeah, I don't split hairs about if you say primates, monkeys, because there are upper primates, lower primates.
It's a chimpanzee, not a monkey. And I'm
yes.
Sorry.
Yes. Simians. Yeah, the scientists say simian.
There's so many things to follow up on, but before we move on, Nick.
They all look the same to me. Somebody has to say that.
They look a little bit the same. Nick, do you think there's any chance that Dr. Plotkin, in the later years of his career, might have reconsidered his life's work and turned a leaf? Or have you ever been asked that before, or speculated? I'm just wondering.
I think you and I, just in casual conversation, shared that question at one point. And I'll tell you, if he did, I just haven't applied myself to his interviews, his public speeches, anything like that.
He was, I don't know the most recent role that he had, but I do know that for several years in the 2010s, that's the right way of saying it, was the scientific advisor for a newer vaccine company called Inovio, INOVIO, which oddly enough was the first company that said that they had a vaccine designed for COVID-19. It didn't come to market, but I think he's still alive. So obviously he must know what he's doing because he's still alive. And
age 90.
Yeah, age 90. That's older than the average right now. Average is going down, as we all know. And he was with the Wistar Institute, and hardly a household name for most people, although a few more people may be familiar with that right now. It is a institute in the city of Philadelphia. I don't know when it was founded, but I think Kaprowski, correct me if I'm wrong, was the one of the most well-known people, as well as there's another doctor there who's also connected with the company, Inovio.
I'll tell you, I would be speaking out of turn to try to characterize, is Wistar, a well-known, or was it, and is he really a star of the Institute? I think he is, because he was revered. And when it came all the way to the big fight, this ended up becoming not a legal battle, but a public debate. And a bunch of scientists locked arms in 2001. And they got together in London and had a meeting, and Mr. Hooper was invited, the author, and they basically all testified on under all of the cameras and lights that they had never used chimpanzees, and that it hadn't happened. So, they defended Kaprowski, and they defended a lie, and we can talk more about that. But I think that he was certainly a star because of the polio race. I mean, that was a huge moment in public health history, and it captured, just like coronavirus has completely taken up rent in all of our heads, rent free, actually. It was the thing, it was the scourge. And so, I know that there was a limelight for a long time on the race. And so that's what I have to say about that.
I have Kaprowski's Wikipedia up here. He got the Belgian Order of the Lion. That's good. The French Order of Merit, Legion of Honor, the Finland's Order of the Lion, too. That's 2 lions. And the Order of Merit from the Republic of Poland. Kaprowski was the target of accusations in the press related to, quote, the oral polio vaccine AIDS hypothesis, unquote, which posited that AIDS pandemic originated from live polio vaccines such as Kaprowski's. Okay, now that's what you were saying a minute ago, Ed. So, excuse me, Nick. So, how's that? Is that playing out? Have we got a solid theory here, or how far does this go?
It's a really important, I'll say, a watershed event. But this is one of those sort of, now that I've worn down my sharp teeth about all of this digging and vetting information and spending years trying to dig up artifacts, we've all gotten very good at it. We can find all kinds of data now. But when I started this in the late 90s, it was kind of slow going. But coming back to Kaprowski and his place in all of this and that event, I think everyone would agree with a decent amount of common sense that if AIDS, as we understand AIDS to be, and what it did in Africa and in the US populations when it hit in the late 70s, if that had occurred in Africa in 1957, don't you think the whole history of the world would know about it? And I mean, it's a very, that's just a litmus test about, look, it's complex, it's subtle. And here's the horrible subtlety of it. It resulted in not an epidemic, but a large increase in cancers in populations that hadn't experienced them before, and in diagnoses and presentations that were completely uncommon. And they manifested commonly in the jawbone and in the soft palate, and in the sinus. And if you are using a locally prepared oral polio vaccine that was not heat inactivated, that I ever heard them discuss, they didn't have heat inactivation in that process for that product. The probability of having what are called non-target pathogens besides the poliomyelitis that they were hoping to grow and magnify in these batches, the probability of having garbage living cells, lymphocytes, macrophages, and who knows what else, other RNA and DNA passengers coming through in the batches is pretty much 100%. They're just their techniques and their technologies at the time did not incorporate methods that would eliminate all of the dangerous stuff from a chimpanzee liver or kidney, excuse me. So that's where I stand on that. So I think there was a horrible downstream effect from that. And as was evidenced in the special virus cancer program, which fired up right after that campaign started causing cancer, we see that both primarily the US and through the auspices under an umbrella of the NIH, we see a huge big network of a storefront set of projects that were about fighting cancer, and then an under the covers set of projects that were about creating new pathogens and pulling new pathogens into mankind and going after all of the biodefense stuff.
That is, Nick, it's, I mean, you're spot on there when you said, oh my gosh, you said so many things. That if there was a massive epidemic of many millions of people who had died in Africa, while in the 1940s and 50s, certainly most Americans were abreast of what was going on in other countries, and vice versa, was the same way. But you would think that such a massive issue would have been known at some point, but either it was just completely missed, or it may not have happened. Now, what I'm saying here is not at all a suggestion that these illnesses, that the cancers, the infections, the deaths were not real, because they were. We're having a discussion right now about, well, why did this stuff happen? And I mean, how is this stuff made? How are these things being made, which are being fed to people and injected in the body? They're being made from cells and serums from other animals. And the whole world of vaccinology up until the 1930s, 1940s was really defined by trying to protect people against bacteria, things that you could see, things which could be alive or dead. You could look at it and go, it's not moving, it's falling apart, it's dead. So the optics, the way all of this stuff was defined, is through protecting people, or the study of and the protection of against bacteria. So now these serums from different animals, sometimes animals which are somewhat genetically very, very closer and closer when you get to the primates, to humans, they start to do things. They cause illnesses. Well, is it a pure serum? Is it just sugar water and whatever else in there? No, there are many things beyond cells, macrophages, and the exosomes. There's a substantial amount of genetic content still and proteins within those serums, which, if it's put into an environment that it's not compatible with, something erroneous may happen. If I could take a piece of memory, a piece of software out of my Mac, all right, and put it onto an IBM mainframe computer from 30 years ago, what would happen? It's all binary. I could plug it in there. The mainframe may still work, or it may get a little funny when something gets put on there. Or better yet, let's take two machines that have a similar processor or similar version of Microsoft. Take a little bit of Microsoft code from Windows 3.1 and put it on your latest version of Windows machine. Just stuff a little procedure, a few blocks into main memory. What happens? Well, it might kind of work. Also might completely fall apart over time if it doesn't know how to handle said condition. So we are exchanging materials between species. And when things don't go right, we say, it must be a pathogen, because it's all defined through the lenses of bacteria. And sure enough, animals sometimes got sick, sometimes they didn't. People sometimes got sick, sometimes they didn't. And what's really happening here is, while innocent people are getting sick and dying, and some pharma companies are getting rich, there is a lot being learned about potential biowarfare agents, but also this is really the gateway to understanding what genetics is all about. They've never been able to figure it out before, but it's sort of like learning how a computer works by stuffing in little pieces of incompatible code and seeing what happens. That's kind of how it all started.
You know, I'm going to jump in and just say I think it's even worse than that. I think it is when they find something, yeah, like even at this point, biological things or even human beings, that they want to understand it so bad that they're going to push it till it breaks. And then after it's broken, then they'll say, "Aha! Oh, that's what breaks it." So now the next person, next one, we won't use that. We'll fine tune it another way. And this goes back to the whole creepy Fabian Society, H.G. Wells, that really out of which the British medical establishment comes. I mean, the British Royal Society. These guys are Fabians, and in the early 20th century. And they're looking for the little tiny Betty building blocks of life. They want the Lego pieces so that they can move them around and play with them, because they want their idea of the new world is not, mama, daddy, two children, and a car in the garage. Their idea is, we don't need no mothers. We're gonna incubators. We're gonna. I mean, and we look at it like, oh, that'll never do that. That's crazy. I don't know. I
Oh,
think
no.
that they are studying us so that when they have their incubator set up, they can, program that new person or that cyber being to act human.
Just like the Microsoft Zune, don't get too hyped up about any new technology, John. They 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 won't. Or the Amazon Fire phone. Remember that? We've all got Fire phones now, don't we? I've got mine right here. I mean, think about it. I saw that little clip of the basically the Matrix. It looked like a ripoff of the Matrix with the babies in the pods. That little horror clip, and I'm watching the Weft public. We're kind of skipping to very, very current events now, but looking at Weft acolytes going out into public and saying certain inflammatory things, outlandish things, and I'm very interested to know how many people are watching the social media responses and analyzing the transcripts from things like Twitter Spaces and all of the places where folks are joining and gathering and talking. The town square. I think that's very fascinating, but it doesn't, to me, change the fact that they can't synthesize what makes us spend time right now out of our lives doing this, and that's our heart and soul and our passion about the things right around us, our family, our heritage about our family history, our communities, our identities, all of that. And we have seen many really, really dystopic images in the media, in the movies over the years, with like what was it, A Wrinkle in Time. And then at the center of the evil of the universe was this big pulsing brain. And it was all about collectivism. And if you gave into you would all be part of the collective. And so the struggle was to remain yourself. And even the little nerdy brother, everyone had superpowers because of their individuality. That's a message we've been fed on for, I don't know, since my childhood. And, I don't think it's an anecdote. It's like, well, I'm just got boundless hope about unfurling these crazy people, if this is really some kind of an orchestrated event, and derailing it through non-violent and non-extreme measures by just shining the light into the cave and saying, hey kids, wake up, look at that. There's someone over there. They're doing puppet shows on the wall. But anyway, sorry.
In the world of computers, or even in organizations, it's well known that if you consolidate and centralize and reuse certain business processes as templates, that you can gain remarkable efficiency when you work at certain scale, but it needs to be dumbed down a little bit. So we, as individuals, are actually very darn inefficient. However, we also, as individuals, have a lot more ability to be creative and to evolve. So there is a pressure right now that we've seen through time to consolidate. Right now, the nature of the internet is in some ways facilitating it even more so than ever before. And they took my jobs. Things are consolidating, but it is while I having worked in corporate America, I can certainly appreciate the benefits of scale. It is trying to stand back a little bit, and I don't want to say fight. I mean to respect it, but at the same time know that it will be the death of us. It'll be the death of our civilization, our cultures, us as humans, if we don't embrace our uniqueness and inefficiencies at the same time. That is what makes, if we just boil everything down to an algorithm that can be solved quickly in an Amazon one click, what's the point of living? I mean, it is the inefficiencies, the art of doing things slowly, sometimes together, whatever, that makes life so beautiful. So this resistance is not just being fought because, we want to be a pain in the neck and we're afraid. It's because we would like to balance research and progress and efficiency with, at the same time, continuing to embrace our uniqueness and our inefficiencies and the beauty of being human, love, and the life experience as a whole.
Well, you got
being
to
a software person, Nick, I'm sure you could appreciate
balancing preservation with transformation. Are you crazy?
Yes.
Well, I'm a person who has studied this stuff from the point of view of government, law, political philosophy, the Constitution, and things like that. And I see us at a point of no return on issues just like the mask issue. I mean, it is what it is. People believe what they believe. They do what they're told. But then you get to that point that you guys were talking about a little while ago, where peer pressure is an issue. I think another thing that just jumped out at me about this book was that every time they had a vaccination regime, and then they'd have an evaluation of it, and it would always say, well, it was very successful, and they give you like some statistics, and it maybe I'm just pulling one out of the thing, but for example, suppose that they give a vaccine to something, and out of 25,000 soldiers, 95 of them get sick.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And the Surgeon General says, well, these guys, they may have gotten sick. Maybe some of them might even die, but we just saved 24,910 lives, and I'm going to do it again if I have to. That is the calculation that you make in a wartime scenario. They're doing that to us in what we think is peacetime now. They're using that type of a logic where, mankind, we need to do it for the good of mankind with a capital M, and sure, a couple of people might die, might sick, might, get paralysis or something, but it's just a few people. Come on, we got to do this. That type of morality existed in the wartime. You can see it in these books, but why do we have it now?
Well, John, you are closest to your community here. Do you think, I like the phrase that Mark used before about being out over his skis. I'm a snow person too, so I was like, oh, I get that. But do you think that we are really zipping around to a lot of different topics and domains, or do you feel like we're we're in familiar territory for most of your folks.
Oh, familiar. Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, I just wanted to check and see. We didn't want to
Well, I
because
mean,
we're in the present day. We're
Dr.
philosophizing about
Paulino,
bioethics. I mean, yeah, we're back in germs in the 50s and 40s. So anyhow,
yeah,
back.
I was going to try to get us back to Dr. Mary's monkey because I think, you know, as we've learned more and more stuff. For instance, when I first read it, the bit about the particle accelerator sounded kind of fishy to me. I said, why are they putting, you know, why should you have to do all this stuff on a you know, and it's this exotic machine that they got from Boston, and it's like all hush hush, but why? But
Because it emits ionized radiation.
and what good is that? Well, they already knew by then that a radiation could cause the cells to what's the word,
Mutate.
to mutate, and they were trying to come up with a mutation that would counteract something that was causing illness. At any rate, she was doing what I think now is called attenuation, right? Where you take the virus, and then you get a monkey sick or a person sick or something, and then you take it out of them and you try to get rid of enough of it, or maybe kill it, so that there's a little bit something left that you can inject into somebody to give them immunity, was the theory. But boy, it seemed like they just they were going kind of crazy with these vaccines in World War II. You know,
Oh, that they were starting before our troops were even called in. When it looked as though the U.S. might become engaged in military conflict in 1939 or 1940, they started to ramp up the vaccine programs to get the troops ready.
and that's where I just wonder if if it wasn't really just more research into, you know, what happens if we do this? How many, you know, how many people will get sick from it, if any, and more in terms of they're trying to understand, as I think it was uh, Baruch Bloomberg that said that he was trying to look into the real nature of man, and he just stumbled onto this method of addressing the hepatitis B problem. But that's what I'm talking about, is a kind of a kind of an effort to find the secret of life. That's what I was trying to say earlier with the Lego pieces. This is what they were about.
In the 1910s, 20s, 30s, there was this the occult group, the group of ridiculously wealthy socialites in the United States and probably England, you know, traveling back and forth or sailing back and forth, if you will, came to this belief that there was something mystical about radiation, and radium was the product of choice at that time, which potentially could lead to life improvement, life extension. The Crowleys, and there's a lot of the occult stuff. I don't really study that stuff, but I'm familiar with some of the names anyways, Huxley and so on. And as a matter of fact, there was a Dr. Hermann Muller at Columbia University who studied this stuff. And he went on to University of Chicago and became a geneticist. He had some work down in Texas, I think, started a fly laboratory where he noted that flies would get sick if you put them next to radiation. It's like, well, no kidding.
Right.
And that was seen as, well, maybe if we can understand this a little bit more, we can improve the fly. We can change the fly, make the fly bigger, smaller, live longer, and then maybe someday we can apply that to people. So this linkage between radiation and genetic augmentation starts then and has continued on. Now, I, not being a molecular biologist or someone who knows how to, modify DNA, I'm familiar with the narrative, but I can't actually say one way or the other how effective or how precise it is. What I do know, though, is as long as you have a little bit of radiation, a little bit of radium, a little reactor somewhere, you can immediately put whatever you're doing under the highest level security clearance available in the United States government. So whether or not the radiation has tangible impact or not, I don't know. I have to assume yes, because the scientists that tell me, and how am I to disprove what they said? It would be, you just can't do that. What we can't, but I can't do no, and I do understand though, is as long as you got a little radium in the room, you can pretty much do whatever you want. And ever since then, we've seen cancer, radiation, virology, viruses, even the virus cancer program itself makes sure that you are all well aware that there's a little bit of radiation involved in it, right? But the radiation symbol,
Yeah.
can redact as much of the book as they want. So I'm uncertain about the precision at which the radioactivity can be used for genetic augmentation or the nature of it in the Married Monkey book, but I tend to be cynical regarding what it provides for classification purposes. What do you think about that, Nick?
Well, I'm just going to jump in and say, when I went through my prostate cancer treatment, I was discovering a lot about my dad.
Mhm.
And I found Dr. Mary's Monkey, and I had a copy of it. I guess this is 2016 or so when I got diagnosed. And so one day I brought it down to him, and I had it with him, and a number of documents with it. And I said, I wanted to ask you about my dad's cancer, and I wanted to ask you about this book, Dr. Mary's Monkey, and can I leave it to you? Would you mind taking a look at it? He said, no, I won't look at that. We get our information, through medical AMA sources, and there's a lot of books out there, but I don't look at them. I stick to my sources, and I said, well, this book is saying that a virus, causes cancer. And he said, no, a virus can't cause cancer. He said, radiation causes cancer. Radiation will cause cancer, but no, a virus won't cause cancer. Well, and again, that's interesting. Of course, we can say, well, okay, what are you talking about with these vaccinations for
Gardasil.
what is that STD that they say is a
Gardasil? Yeah,
Gardasil, and
of course.
so
What is a
again,
hepatitis
this is
vaccine? You get vaccinated with the Hep B vaccine because it causes liver cancer. It's an oncogenic infectious pathogen. That's it.
And the cancer is caused by the hepatitis B, which the breakout happening in yellow fever, it was liver cancers. Strange how this keeps happening, just happening and described differently.
Well, so there are a couple of there's a couple things here I want to just interject and not I don't want to veer wildly from where we're at. We seem to be examining or circling premise or cause. Why? How come? I saw a fantastic set of documentaries. One of them is about I think it's called Thrive. And it's made by, I can't remember that fella. It's the son of one of the very, very well-to-do guys. But he actually kind of spent instead of being Richie Rich, he spent his life really examining the issues in the world. And we're talking about the whole spectrum of everything, from social injustice to microbiology. And he found a lot of this same material. And he examined in that documentary I would call it the superstructure or the bedrock that occurred right around the beginning of the 20th century. And we all know the big names that were in banking and energy and all of that that sort of set the game plan for the 20th century. And one of them was the Rockefeller approach to essentially capture the regulation, not only of medicine, but of medical science. And we are now living in that vision. And we see doctors, I'm on spaces on Twitter with doctors who are finally coming out of the closet about what it's been like for the last 3 years to live under these upside down, crazy dystopian situations where they want to do one thing, they want to do another therapy, they want to stop a therapy, they don't want to put someone on a ventilator, and there are forces at play that they have been subject to. And that's all, that's corruption and influence are very classic forces in human experience. But the point being is we need to keep looking back at that superstructure and how it is all sort of tangled up in the ivy of what I call Rockefeller medicine. There are other authors. There are other investigators. If you just go and search Rockefeller medicine, you'll get a really good cross-section of material that you can examine closely. There are some excellent scholars who have done this work. We don't have to go back and do the excavation, but that's a big piece of this.
It is indeed. And it's one I've been trying to emphasize myself. You look at people like Thomas Milton Rivers, who started with the Naval Research Institute in the South Pacific and ends up with the Rockefeller. He's the guy that says, Koch's postulates, we can't prove by Koch's postulates, but we can assume that we found it anyway because of X, Y, and Z. And I think that was really a beginning for them to just start saying, well, whenever somebody's sick, there's got to be a virus, and we're going to go and find the virus, and we're going to do all the research in the world it takes to find, what is that little bitty particle, that little bitty, Lego piece or whatever it is that is causing this person to be sick. Mm-hmm. And that is so much part of the Rockefeller medicine, that plus surgery, of course, and an emphasis on medication that is based on pharmaceuticals that they can create through their chemical or biological or associations and their own, everything becomes within the Rockefeller universe, mm-hmm. From birth to from cradle to grave. And your medicine completely changed away from homeopathic and now, I mean, it's gone so far that we don't even have individual physicians anymore, and that's one of the phrases.
And they're constrained to 15-minute encounters maximum with us, mm-hmm. and they are not incented to go after the root cause of whatever is really the underlying problem or behavior or habit in our lives that's causing us to be there in the office with them. They are instructed to pair our conditions and our symptoms with a predetermined, foregone pharmaceutical conclusion. That's it. And I love these doctors that are speaking out. I don't think that all doctors are awful. And I think that there's a whole lot of influence and corruption, like I said, because of the financial structure, the pressures, the risk for litigation. There, it is not Little House on the Prairie with, the doctor with his little black bag. It's a very, very difficult world for them. And I think we also owe them all an ear. And we will learn more about their ideas about how maybe to start approaching and fixing that part of the problem.
The virus part, everything being a virus. Case study for that. Look at the 1918 Spanish flu, the big one, the one that Fauci. I don't think he can go a day in his life without talking about the 1918 flu to somebody, about the 1980 flu with somebody, where all the evidence, looking under a microscope, you could see bacteria, you could see something which was ravaging the insides of the lungs of many people, almost everyone, who died of that very peculiar, just coughing up blood illness, which spread rapidly and in particular impacted troops, mostly troops in transit, United States, France, and to some extent England. And a Dr. Shope, spelled S-H-O-P-E, and I've always said Shope, but someone once corrected me, said, no, it's Shope. I'm like, all right.
Mais oui.
From the Rockefeller Institute, with an associate of his, investigated the 1918 flu sometime in the 1920s and said, well, even though there's bacteria all over the place, it's got to be a virus. And the virus causes the weakness which allows the bacteria to thrive. And
Right.
so they took this thing, which could have probably been very, very easy to follow evidence. They could have traced it back to where it came from, the epidemiological evidence. But no, it's something that now you can't see. They don't know where it came from, and it can cause mysterious illnesses. And boom, the hijacking of that was so powerful, John. And ever since then, it's like there's thousands of viruses that you must be protected against, else they're all going to kill you. And you know what is really motivating this, as Nick earlier said, different people have different ideas. I think it was just the fascination of, well, there are ways to be able to transmit illness, and it wasn't able to be seen under a microscope. There's a whole lot more that can't be seen under a traditional microscope that you can now see, some of it anyways, under an electron microscope. And they were realizing that what they had was a gateway to studying something much, much bigger. And by keeping alive, no pun intended, the need to vaccinate, this belief that, primates and pangolins and spiders and whatever else are doing crazy things in the jungle, and now everyone needs to be vaccinated. We need to be protected. We need to told what to put on our face and what direction to walk up and down the stores and who we can hug and everything else in our life. It's just all part of this insane drive to get people more and more in line with being the compliant test species that are needed in order to facilitate ongoing research. And look, you shouldn't need a PhD from Harvard to know that if you find a sick monkey in the jungle, rip it open and take out some cells from its kidneys and inject it into someone, they might feel under the weather or die. You really, you need to be a certified molecular biologist to know that that's probably not a very good idea. Maybe a little bit of sunlight, eating some good fresh food, sleep, whatever, having a family that loves you will probably, do a whole lot more good than anything that can come out of the research laboratories at Rockefeller Medicine.
No.
I don't know. Call me a little crazy and skeptical.
No.
Call me anti-science if you wish.
Listen, you have not been listening to Scott Gottlieb. Scott Gottlieb has explained that, these wonderful therapies that you call therapies, they're far better than natural immunity, Mark. Didn't you know that?
Which is why we need to outlaw, the supplements and the vitamins.
Yep.
And we can't have any of that.
You've heard that, John, right? That's where they're going next.
Anything homeopathic, forget about it.
Yeah.
Well, that's right. Well, guys, thanks for tonight. Tomorrow I'm going to lay out where I'm at with Hep B and my own father's case, and how that yellow fever research and Hep B research and all of that. Of course, it does lead up to the polio question, and there's another good one of was it a virus? Was polio ever a virus? There's people, on both sides of that now. And it's very, very, very curious that all of the deep research, all of it is tied to the Rockefeller medicine when you go to the virus vaccine game. Are you guys excited at all about Dr. Shiva, Dr. Vandala Shiva from Massachusetts? Maybe you haven't been following him, but he's back on Twitter, and he's just making all kinds of noise about how he's going to expose all this stuff. Either of you?
It's kind of been like spring, people popping up, hey, I'm back. It's, oh no, it's like when in the the big superhero movie when they undid the snap and everybody came back from the dust. I haven't followed him. You said Vandala Shiva?
Yeah, I think that's his. It's
Oh, okay.
VA_Shiva. I think that's.
Dr.
Oh,
Shiva.
gotcha. I follow Dr. Vandava Shiva in India.
She's great too. I
Oh
love to
yeah,
watch
yeah,
her.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, but no, I haven't, there's so much going on. I have a million pages of things to read because I constantly get papers and people share papers and, it takes a lot of time to dig, but, thank you again for, having us. And I would be happy to continue the conversation at some point in the future.
Very
Same
good.
here.
All right, everyone. Thanks again for being with us. And, if you have comments or suggestions, put them in the comment section after the show. Don't forget to push the like button if you haven't already on Facebook, on our YouTube channel, so we can get some more people watching the show.
If I may put in a plug, Nick, could you just say you did a course over the weekend? Could you just put in a plug for that? Sorry, John. I just think that would be a chance
Let's
absolutely
to highlight this.
Absolutely. So I've done a couple of different, just basically captured one of the study groups where I walk through a body of material like a slide deck. There are 3 of these segments up on the net. And if you'll just go and look at me on Twitter, you don't have to follow. You can follow if you like. I generally tweet medical, a little bit of policy stuff. I try not to be political. I'm kind of centrist, and there's a whole lot of cats and raccoons in my timeline. So just be prepared for that. But I'll put those links up and you can watch. And I do a structured presentation. There's a 100, 150, and 200 level. And the one that just came out is 150. So I'll post that tonight.
I've seen 1 and 2, and I'm looking forward to seeing 150. And it's all great. It's very, very nicely laid out, folks. A quick education in some very, very important material. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, everyone. And I'll see you tomorrow morning, 11 o'clock for Mind Fields.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.